The mental health definition of grief is the process of adjusting to a loss. And when you look at it that way, it actually opens up the process of grief or grieving to be much more than emotional, but also physical and spiritual. We don't just grieve once and we're over it. Your reaction to it gets hardwired in your brain. When another experience comes along that triggers how you felt or how you thought or how you reacted to that one, it brings it back up again. We have to grieve the loss of things as we age and grow and change in a different way. Because if you don't process it, then you're carrying some undone stuff.
Hello, welcome to America Lost and Found. We're taping from Studio 7070's own Blueberry Suite. Our focus here is to feature guests who have taken losses in their lives and opened their minds to discover a deeper purpose. My sister, Gina Boss, disappeared October 17th, 2000, out of Lincoln, Nebraska. And her disappearance has taught me a lot of things, but the one thing it really taught me is not to miss out on my own life because I'm missing her. Loss can swallow us up with all the emotions that accompany the grief cycle. In the case of long-term missing persons cases or any other life's long-term grief situation, we can get wrapped up in trying to make it go away, forget about who we are, and abandon our lives. This intense focus on the pain of our loss takes our eyes away from the beauty that remains. And I believe that if we love anything, that love lasts. Love doesn't die. And the things that, the people that we've lost or the situations that we've lost in, there's all different ways to have loss in our lives. That love lives on, and that's a piece of us that will never leave. And I would just like to get our show started. This first show, we're kind of introducing what we're doing here and why we're here. And it's not just about missing people. This is also about anybody who has taken their loss and turned it around on its ear and made something beautiful out of their lives. And I would like to welcome Duane Bowers. I want to tell you a little bit about Duane. He has a bunch of letters after his name that I can't see right now, but hopefully I will see them soon. They're coming up. But I met Duane because my sister disappeared. He was working for the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, and though my sister was not a child, I was able to volunteer for the National Center to work with people who had lost a family member, and they would partner me with them. And Duane was one of our trainers to help us get through our own loss, but also to give us tools to help others get through their loss. Duane T. Bowers, LPC, CWC, is a trauma educator, author, therapist, and certified wellness coach in private practice. For the past 2 decades, he has provided support to families of victims of missing, murdered, exploited, and trafficked persons. And he has supported and trained the professional staff, law enforcement, and agencies who work with these families and victims in the U.S. and in Canada. And there's so much more on his bio that I could read, and we can go over that other times. But today, I just want to get started with Duane. Welcome, Duane.
Good to see you, Jannel. Thank you. Thank you. And I'm glad you cut that short.
Yeah, it's funny being a singer-songwriter and hosting events. I always ask people to send me a 2 or 3 sentence bio, and I usually get one very long, even though I say 2 or 3 sentences. And so then I have to, because I have to introduce so many people, I don't have time to read all the wonderful things they've done. Yes, they deserve credit, but I generally run out of time in a show to do that. But yes. Thank you, Duane, for joining me here today. And I just want to talk about some of the aspects of grief. Maybe the definition of grief, when I looked it up, is deep sorrow. But also, I was thinking about, I wanted to get some ice cream the other day, and there was no Dairy Queen around for me to get my peanut butter parfait because there's so few Dairy Queens right now, putting in a Dairy Queen plug. Um, that I didn't get to have that. I had to go, oh, I'll just have yogurt. And I've heard that even with those small losses that we go through a cycle of grief in order to be okay and accept that loss. So I did feel myself going through that. I wasn't preparing for this moment in my ice cream quest, but it was interesting to have lived that this week, and then I accepted that what I could have was yogurt. And I actually found some chocolate chips to put in my yogurt to fool myself.
Well, the mental health definition of grief is the process of adjusting to a loss. And when you look at it that way, it actually opens up the process of grief or grieving to be much more than emotional, but also physical and spiritual. The process, when you look at the process, it includes many of the aspects of being human. So while there is certainly the emotional aspect, we forget the fact that our bodies go through changes when we are separated from something we're attached to. Um, our brain, our physical brain, but then also our mind goes through changes, and spiritually, we have to evolve as well. We have to adjust to the loss as well. So I like the definition of the process of adjusting to a loss because it tells you that it's not going to be immediate. It's going to be a process. And it also opens it up so that you can look at the full human and see how we as humans have to go through what we have to go through to adjust to the missing or loss due to death. And that also opens it up for things like moving, leaving friends behind, aging as we lose some of our physical functioning, those kinds of things. We have to grieve all of those losses, even things that we're better off without, like say a bad divorce. You still grieve, even though you're just happy that it's over, So yeah,
That's so
so
true.
it's a full process.
That's so true. And this week, because I have had some of my own grief in recent months, big grief, and then some things came up from my childhood a couple of weeks ago. I started thinking more about just that I believe, and maybe you'll think I'm crazy, but that we're all in some sort of state of grief every day. Because there's just so much that happens in a life, and maybe I have a mental illness here, but I remember when I was young that I would have something go wrong, and I would have a way of attaching that to another wrong thing. It would, like, the feeling of that wrong or that thing that hurt me, I would attach it to another thing that hurt me. And so this week I was thinking of, do we string our grief together, and make that a thing? And does that rule our lives? I don't know. I'm just, it's just interesting. We're so complicated and everybody reacts so different to grief. And as I was looking at my own way of reacting to it, I thought, well, maybe that's why one of the characteristics or details of why we act differently to grief or react differently to it, because we have our own earlier experiences. And go ahead.
And so your reaction to it gets hardwired in your brain. And so then when another experience comes along that triggers how you felt or how you thought or how you reacted to that one, it brings it back up again. So it can actually connect then a neural connection to that. So in a way, yes, I can see how that could be a string. Something else to think about, though, is that we must re-grieve things And that's, I think, where we fall short as therapists. We don't talk to people about re-grieving. So you had a loss when you were a child. Let me do it a different way. I've worked with a couple whose son was killed when he was 10, and they went through a grieving process, and I worked with them, and they grieved that loss. Um, and things were fine until 8 years later. And 8 years later, they started bickering, and they started and it got really nasty, and they started even talking about blaming each other for the son's loss and whatever. Do the math. What happened 8 years later? He would have graduated high
Mm.
school. We have to grieve the loss of things as we age and grow and change in a different way. They now had to grieve the loss of him not graduating high school. And the same thing was going to happen at an age when he would have gotten married or had a child. So I think another part of that string is we don't just grieve once and we're over it. As we age, as we reach new life markers, we have to adjust again to the fact that that person is not there. And this is true for missing. This is true for loss due to death. So there are many ways that losses are connected together. Absolutely.
Wow. That story brought huge buckets of tears to my eyes. Like, I'm not letting them out, but they're like, I have buckets of tears because I I don't know if other people are like this. Again, maybe there's some some situation with me, but when I have a grief that I thought I should be over and, get over that, I kind of punish myself for it coming back into my life and into my consciousness. And it's so refreshing to hear you say that we do need to go through it again and revisit it and heal more. That really speaks to me.
We need to reprocess it from this different perspective, from
Mm-hmm.
this different. So they grieved as parents of a 10-year-old, but then they had to grieve as parents of what would have been an 18-year-old, of a kid who would have graduated high school. They had to grieve the fact that he didn't. He wasn't there to do it. It was a life marker that they needed to adjust to the fact, and because they were seeing his friends, they were, everything around them was reminding them. And so because they didn't know they were grieving and they didn't know how to, they started taking it out on each other. And it was unfortunate.
Well, that makes sense, you
Mhm.
know, because, what I was just saying, not that it's all about me, but that I'm blaming myself. I'm currently single, so I have no one around me to blame. So I'm just thinking about me, me, me. But anyway, wow. That's really good information to get out there, Duane. That's
Yeah.
really good.
And the thing of it is with re-grief, you probably should go back and talk to a therapist again. It's not going to take as long, and it's not going to be as intense. But you need to kind of have somebody walk with you through it to make sure that you are um, doing the full processing necessary. Because if you don't process it, then you're carrying some undone stuff. And then boom, you hit another marker. And so you not only have this new regrief, but then you have the stuff you didn't process before. And it becomes really thick.
Yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense. And I just want to say right now that I can only speak from life experience. And so I can only say things that worked for me or that what I'm going through. I am no authority on this. I am just simply a human that has had some big grief in my life. And I have found some ways to um, transform what I went through and make it something beautiful, as well as I have met so many people that have done the same. And I appreciate having you here, Duane, as a person who actually knows what they're talking about, and can put words and description and process to what I'm personally now dealing with, which it's interesting. But like I said earlier, I wonder if everyone walking through this planet are always in some sort of stage of grief. And my most recent episode, that came out of nowhere. I didn't even, I mean, I knew it was there because I remember the situation when I was a child, but I didn't know the deep wound that was still sitting there, until it felt like a knife just went in and pulled it out, and rearranged my insides. So it gives me more empathy for people and their reactions to grief. And, I kind of wanted to talk to you today about the families of the missing, although that's because that's my world. But the families of the missing, I see from mothers, fathers, children, siblings, they all have different reactions, different processes. And it's not like all the mothers act like this and all the fathers act. No, it's all around the block and then some. And sometimes even those of us that are right in the middle of it, it's a little bit hard to understand because we want to help them. And maybe we're doing too much to try to help them. I don't know. Do you have any advice for those of us that have big hearts or that want to help others, or even, for ourselves in our process?
I think in helping others, the best we can be is with them, not even guiding them, not even telling them necessarily about our own situation, because their experience is different. Them hearing about our situation lets them know they're not alone. But we shouldn't anticipate they're going to follow the same path we followed. And so I think the best thing we can be is just there, just be there. But there's a couple of tricks that I think are important, particularly loss due to death. If the missing was then discovered later as being deceased, using the same tense that they are using. So if a person is talking about a child that is deceased, but they're saying he is this and he is that, then we respond with, yes, he is, not correcting them saying, you mean he was. When you do that, you tear their heart out. The other thing that's very hard for parents is trying to determine, how do I talk to people about how many kids I've got? If somebody says, how many children do you have? How do I answer that? And they have to come up with their answer, but they need a place to talk about that. And so just being there helps them with that. So even when someone's missing and they're not deceased, we go through those fears of what might have happened to them, but we don't dare want to verbalize them because, number one, we don't want people to think that's what we believe. And number two, we're afraid if we say it, it might somehow affect the universe and cause it to happen. But we need that place to say, sometimes I'm just so afraid I'm just so afraid that someone might be hurting them. We need to be able to say it to somebody. The best we can be is that person to say, bring it on. I'm not going to judge whatever you say. I have been through pain. I have been through my own experience. So bring it on. I'm just here to be with you and walk with you. So don't know if that helped, but that's the best we can be is there, THERE.
I love that. Yeah, that's a really good reminder to be there, to listen, and to, I guess, kind of mirror them. Whatever they're saying, you just say that back to them. Not every word, but
even when they say it's all my fault, and it's not, to just go, that's one way of looking at it. Okay. Not correcting them. They can do that stuff in therapy, but as a friend, as a person that's walking the journey with them, okay, that's where you are today. I hear you. You don't have to feed it if you don't believe it, but you don't want to take it away from them either. There's some reason they have to experience that right now.
Wow. Well, that's really good. And I think that's going to help people. It's helping me. So it's helping one
Good.
person. And I guess that's what we're here for, is to help
Yeah.
one person.
The starfish story,
Yeah.
throwing the starfish back in. The person said, doesn't make a difference. There's a bunch more on the beach. It made a difference to that one.
Mm, mm, mm. That's so good. That's so good. I remember early on when Gina disappeared, people would say, "When are you going to get over it?"
Mhm.
And as I was looking up grief in the last couple of days and the stages of grief, I saw that there's no time limit. You can't put it in a box, and it is what it is. I think that I will always grieve my sister.
The
I
answer to
don't,
that is
yeah,
grief never ends.
it
Even
doesn't.
from a therapy point of view, you never stop adjusting to a loved one not being present because you keep growing and there's different things you need them for. And they're not there to fill that. So you have to find it somewhere else. Grief never stops. But as a therapist, we never say that to someone. When someone comes in and says, how long is this going to last? You don't want to say, oh, forever. It's not very helpful.
They're hearing it now, though.
Yeah,
um,
yeah. But it's a matter of it gets less intense, it gets easier to
it's
deal with,
true.
but you're constantly in the process of adjusting because you're in the process of growing and needing them in a different way.
So true. So true. Well, Duane, I hate to cut us off because this was so good today. I think this was my therapy session. I'm going to have to watch it just to take it all in again. But I want to say thank you, Duane, for being here. Thank you,
And
Blueberry
thank you for
Sweet.
doing this.
Yes, yes. Thank you, Richard and Shanti, for being there for us. And then I want to have the viewers know that you're in the DC area,
Mhm.
but you also do a lot of trainings all over US and Canada, and probably available for other countries with.
I have done other countries as
Okay,
well, absolutely.
okay. So, how would they get in touch with you? Do you have a website?
Through my website, which is Duane T. Bowers. So the Duane T as in Thomas, B as in Bowers, Boyd, OWERS.com. DuaneTBowers.com.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you so much. And I hope that this episode was insightful for those of you that are listening. And I hope you tune in again for more of this. Thank you. Bye.
Bye bye.